President Biden getting his first challenge from the incoming GOP-controlled House. Go visit the border. Republicans ready to get tough on the president's immigration policies. They'll have a lot on their plate. Every month, there is a new record when it comes to the number of people illegally crossing. And it is expected to get worse once the Trump-era Title 42 ends in December, which may force the administration to take drastic measures. GOP leader Kevin McCarthy threatening to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas over the crisis. He is inviting the commander-in-chief to witness it firsthand.
I invited the president to go to the border with me. I explained to the president, he asked me about the border, so I told him about my current trip.
Our very own Peter Ducey asking if the White House has checked the mailbox for Biden's invitation.
We know the president's never been down to the border. The possible next speaker says that he wants him to go with him, so is he going to?
So look, he's been there. He's been to the border, and since he took office.
When did he go to the border?
Since he took office, the President Biden has been taking action to fix our immigration system and secure our border. We're not seeing that from Republicans. We're not seeing a willingness to work with us on fixing a situation that's been around for decades now. Instead, they're doing political stunts.
It's not just concerns down at the border. The crisis could compromise airline safety because an air marshal warning about another 9/11.
Sir, please replace the air marshals on the border. Stop taking them out of the skies and let us do the job that we were trained to do. We have been decimated. We have been depleted. We're on less than 1% flights. These ground-based duties that they're pulling us out of the sky to go to the border are just demolishing our chances at stopping another 9/11.
Jesse, why does the administration continue to go back to things that are demonstrably proven untrue? The president has not been to the border. He one time went to a campaign event. It was a drive-by. We know this. This has been out there. Why do they keep doing that?
You'll have to ask the French binder reader that question. I'm not in her head, and neither do I want to be, Dana. He's never going to the border with McCarthy, just like I'm never going to a concert with Greg. Doesn't matter how many times he asks, I'm not going.
I've never asked.
You have.
No. I would not be seen in public with you.
Well, that's how Biden feels about McCarthy. You don't want to elevate McCarthy also and say, okay, Kevin, let's go down to the border and see where I've failed. The images, too, of President Biden with a younger and thinner Kevin McCarthy pointing at the failure flanked by Border Patrol agents who Joe Biden called whippers isn't a good look for Joe. It's not a good look for his base. His base doesn't want to see that. And to visit the problem, you're kind of acknowledging the problem. But most leaders need to lay eyes on a crisis. It's like if your basement floods, you go downstairs and you look at the flood. Yeah. You don't tell your wife you're now basement czar and pawn it off to her. So if AOC and Chuck Schumer say, well, we got to have open borders because we need baby makers to come here. And on the other hand, you have Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, and I believe Nancy Pelosi saying, you know what, we actually kind of have to secure the border a little bit. Joe Biden's going to have to choose. And there is a way to thread the needle. You can have a strong border, and you can have a humane and rational asylum policy. I don't know why that's so hard. And I don't think they're going to get together and do anything because Chuck Schumer came in even before the election was finished and said, mass amnesty for 10 million illegals. And that just poisons the whole debate.
For weeks, well, months leading up to the election, Greg, the White House and Mayorkas at the Homeland Security Department, they always said the border is secure. The border is secure. They said it declaratively. And now you actually see Axios with a scoop last night that the White House is actually thinking about a complete overhaul of their immigration policy.
Well,
Why would they do that?
I don't know how they can do that because to overhaul something, there has to be a something. And I don't think I've ever heard an articulation of something from the administration. It would be kind of cool to hear Biden articulate a policy or a philosophy regarding the border, just the border itself. Should it be strong? How do you define strong? How are you maintaining its strength? But we've never really heard that. Instead, we're in this mirrorverse, right? A few years ago, it was AOC at the border weeping, and we called that a stunt. And now You got McCarthy saying we're going to the border, and then that's called a stunt. That's the mirrorverse. That's when one party reacts to the other exactly how the other party would react. I am tempted to do a Jesse-style relationship analogy, but I realize that it doesn't really work for him. It often gets him into trouble. But I'm going to go ahead anyway. You know, the Republicans and Democrats, it's like it's a troubled marriage, and the Republicans are the henpecked husband, right? Republicans are always on the defensive when it comes to compassion. They always have to explain to the Democrats how much they care, but it's never the reverse, right? Dems never have to prove to the Republicans that they care, even though their policies, whether it's the border, the economy, or crime, hurts way more people than it helps. This is a one-sided marriage, and the husband's always in the doghouse, and he's kept there as a strategy by the Democrats.
I approve of that analogy.
Do you? Yes, I was trying to do my...
I even like it. The Republicans are going to sleep on the couch.
Yes,
That's what's going to happen. Judge,
Does that happen anymore? Do people still sleep on couches?
Not my husband.
The husband.
Yeah. Judge, what about the air marshals being pulled from their duty to go to the border?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that's very interesting. And apparently it's something like 1% of the air marshals are now on airplanes doing what they're supposed to be doing. But, you know, but it's similar to when you took the Border Patrol off of really monitoring the borders so that they could put, you know, diapers on babies and so that they could be babysitters themselves. Look, what's going on with this Biden administration is crazy. And, you know, Greg, when you said how there is an articulation, there has to be an articulation of something, well, I'm telling you, Mayorkas will disagree with you because Mayorkas says he intends to use the same plan that he used in April. Except I looked up his April plan. I couldn't find a plan. So, you know, it's all about smoke and mirrors right now. The dangers now are to Americans who will be flying. 1% now of the airplanes. And believe me, the air marshals know very well where the flights are, where there could be a problem. And to take 99% of the air marshals and put them at the border for people who are violating our laws and illegally entering with no monitoring of who they are is outrageous. It is, again, putting the American citizen in, you know, in this second-class seat. But I got to tell you what's interesting about all of this is that there are certain people now who think that it is time to change the policies at the border, and they're now looking at the Trump policies. So whether it's Department of Homeland Security and I think National Security Council and Justice, they're now talking about barring asylum for single adults illegally crossing who have not first applied for legal pathway, or making sure that some of them are in a refugee resettlement before they actually access asylum at our border. What took them so long? Do they have enough people to vote Democrat now so they don't have to worry?
Yeah. What is driving the Biden administration to make this change or to suggest that they're going to have to make a change?
Well, I think that there's been a huge surge in the number of Democrats speaking out against it. And part of that is, even though it was a stunt, to Greg's point that everyone just, you know, takes their turn having stunts, we now have undocumented migrants being shipped to northeastern cities, right? The Martha's Vineyard thing obviously attracted a ton of attention. It's happening in Chicago. Mayor Adams here has said that he wants to take people, but he needs federal government help to be able to house them. Muriel Bowser in D.C. is saying it's a national security threat. You can't be doing this. So now you have high-profile Democrats talking about the same things that Republicans have been talking about. And I think that the Biden administration has taken note of that. It's so hard, and this happens on both sides, for people to just admit, to your point, Jesse, that we kind of want the same thing, right? There are little differences in the level of asylum that they would allow, that Republicans would want versus Democrats, how you want the legal system to operate. But generally speaking, when you look at the surveys, everybody, 70% plus, wants a pathway to citizenship for people who are coming here or undocumented. They want them to be able to have their day in court. And the Mayorkas 4-point plan from April, it did exist. There were 4 points, I remember 2 of them at least, which said we need more tents, basically housing for them down there, and to send more judges. That's not enough to solve this problem. And there are so many Democrats on record throughout the last couple of decades talking about building a physical barrier. Hillary Clinton was one of them. It came up in the 2016 election over and over after Donald Trump said, you know, they're bad hombres and, you know, they're the worst people. And then lo and behold, it's not a full wall, but there are Democrats, Biden, Hillary, Bill Clinton, et cetera, who have been supportive of that. So I think that there is a path forward if people will agree about the fact that Democrats and Republicans like the illegal labor. And that's what this really comes down to. I think that it will never be solved unless people can get past that.
Well, and all of those issues will never be actually solved unless the border is secure. So that's going to have to be the first.
And you wouldn't need tents or judges, additional judges, if the border were secure.
Yeah. Well,
hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.